Stephen interviews you.
Discussing topics that matter to you.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, smash the like button, and feel free to share it with others so that they can see it too. And if you're new to this channel, please feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can get updates on what I'm doing for this channel. Thank you all so much for your support. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Stephen Interviews You. This is episode number 38. And this is going to be another one of those special episodes where we both go down a trip down memory lane, so to speak. This is going to be a fun one. So I am joined by a very special guest.
Hi, guys. Drew Saylor, former Chillicothe Paint.
Yep. I'm glad you mentioned that because obviously I'm wearing the hat right now for the Chillicothe Paints. And you and I, Drew, we go back quite a ways, back to the 2008 season for the Chillicothe Paints. And we'll get to that soon in this interview. But let's start off with this question. This is like a two-parter. If you could summarize your baseball career as a player, how would you describe it? You can be as detailed as you want about it. And also the other part is what got you started? What prompted you what inspired you to go, yeah, I want to get into the game of baseball?
Well, the latter question I think is probably the easier one. I shared a love of baseball, and I actually started with my dad. My dad actually passed away a little over 2 years ago now from a sudden heart attack, and I struggle to think of memories where I don't have him a part of that. Him and my mom and my family, and it really goes back to dad being the high school teacher at Barberton High School, and allowing me to tag along and allowing me to be one of the kids, one of the students, and just get a chance to just grow the love of the game. I think through the love that I had for my dad, and it was cool to be able to see, not necessarily just because the team was successful. They went to a couple state finals, and they were state runners up, I think, in 1994, I think, if I recall correctly. And just remembering all those moments. And, I was very fortunate because my cousin was on that state championship team. He ended up pitching at Ohio State. But I remember, like, I was always surrounded by family, and by proxy of that, I think the game has allowed me and afforded me the opportunity to remember them. I think that even though right now I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, we got a game tonight. Starting a 6-game set against the Isotopes. But I think that my love of the game, if I really were to try to draw it back, it'd be just because of Dad. And I think if you try to summarize my playing career, I'd probably say fortunate. I would say lucky. Being able to experience some of the things that I've experienced in the game. Most especially being drafted and playing professional baseball and getting an opportunity, to travel across the country and the world for that matter, and being able to meet incredible people such as yourself. I'm very fortunate. This game has been awesome to me and awesome to my family, and even now, I'm very fortunate now that I get a chance to be able to instill a number of lessons and strategies to the next generation of players. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about the game of baseball is just how we pass down those lessons, and not necessarily just in terms of like how to hit or how to pitch or how to run the bases, but mostly like how to be able to impact the next generation of people that are going to carry the history and the tradition of the game moving forward.
Yeah. Moving forward, speaking of your playing career, that does include your days at college. And I do think this would be a fun topic to discuss, even though I cover specifically college football these days. But I do think this would factor in. Played at Kent State University, the Golden Flashes, up there in Kent, Ohio. Could you tell me what that experience was like playing college ball up there? Because I know next to nothing right now about Kent State University and what that is about. I mean, I hear about them all the time in the MAC, but what is it? What was it like playing in Kent State?
You go into an organization or to a program like that, you get a chance to be able to understand just the history. I mean, you go all the way back to Thurman Munson, who was a alumnus of Kent State. He actually still holds a ton of records at the university. You look at, all the different draft picks, from Matt Greer to Carb to Emmanuel Burris, Andy Sonnenstein. There's a lot of guys, and I know I'm missing a ton of other people that made it to the big leagues. But also you look at, just the like I said, just the tradition, the winning tradition. It actually started all the way back with Bob Morgan. Bob Morgan ended up coaching at Kent State, then going to Indiana. And the guy that came after him is a guy by the name of Bob Todd. Bob Todd had success at Kent State and then went to Ohio State and was actually able to have a lot of really good championship seasons at Ohio State. And then the guy that came after him was Danny Hall. And Danny Hall had a lot of success at Kent State and then went to Georgia Tech and had a ton of success down there. And then after Danny was Rick Remblack, and Rem went to Wake Forest and had success. And then Scott Strickland came after him. And Scott went to University of Georgia. And it's kind of like a bit of a cradle of coaches, if you will, with respect to just how successful the program has been. And obviously being able to have Jeff Duncan be able to be a steward of the program and just continue that winning tradition at Kent State. And, I'm very fortunate, to be a brick in that whole entire foundation. And, I said, looking back, being able to win a MAC championship, regular season championship there in 2006 was very special. And really just, again, there's so much about just Kent and what it means to the region, to the area. And obviously, one of the guys that has made that place a pitching factory for the better part of 30 years is Mike Birkbeck. And I owe Berkey my career. I've known him since I was, 13 years old and went through the whole recruiting process. Ended up not going to Kent State right out of high school. I went to the University of Cincinnati for 2 years. And then the transfer back, Berkey was instrumental in being able to recruit me to be able to get back there. And it's funny because, I wanted to go to Kent right out of high school. It just didn't really line up at that time. But, being able to, look back in hindsight, 2020, it was actually exactly the way that the journey was supposed to be able to go back there and play for the Golden Flashes. And like I said, I look back at a ton of my teammates that I've had there, and a lot of those guys went to play, minor league baseball and had been successful. And, even after that, as they transitioned down and got into other jobs, like it's still a time period that I look back with very kind eyes and a very proud alumnus of Kent State.
Yeah. So adding on to that, your experiences at Kent State, this is like a fun question. Do you have any fun stories that you can recall while you're playing at Kent State? Like anything that jumped out at you? Like, oh yeah, that was pretty interesting. Oh, that was hilarious. Or
well, I don't know how this is. Probably definitely more G-rated, so I'm gonna have to probably table some of the other stories. No, I think, talking about culture changers, Scott Strickland's first year was in 2005. And, one of the things that Strick was very, instrumental, I think, in a lot of our lives is being able to get us to understand that we got to play for each other. Definitely interleaved a lot of our family dynamics. One of the things that I thought was funny is his dad. It was Easter Sunday. We're playing in Toledo, and obviously, conference weekends are really big, and can kind of build a little bit more of the anxiety and stuff like that. And his dad was going around, and he painted a mouse, or not a mouse, a bunny face on himself, and was going around and hopping around to each room and knocking and giving us candy to be able to celebrate Easter. And just kind of like broke a little bit of the ice, and kind of like allowed us to understand, like, hey, like, we're here to play baseball, but at the end of the day, like, we're still going to be able to celebrate, as a team together, and just the camaraderie. And I think that that's one of the first moments I had. I was like, man, like this place is different. And I think even beyond that, the group that we had together and the team that we had, like, there really isn't like one specific moment, but I think that just the wanting to be around one another. You get done with practices, and yeah, you had classes and stuff like that from time to time, but just the guys wanted to stay there. They wanted to work even after the practice. So obviously, NCAA rules, you're only allowed to work so many hours in a week, but obviously you could do more if you so choose on your own. And I think the thing that stood out to me that I wouldn't necessarily say would be fun or funny, but really was a standard bearer was just the expectation that you were going to do more there, and the joy that you got out of being around your teammates. I think was really a foundation for me that I think that I still try to carry today, just because um, I think one of the reasons why it's important to be, a part of successful organizations, especially someone like myself that is a culture builder. Like if you look through my different phases and changes that I've had in my career, being on the player development side and into the leadership side of things, sometimes you need that roadmap of what it is to be successful. And I look back at my time at Kent State as being like kind of that like foundation for me. Like, hey, this is what winning looks like. This is what success looks like, both on and off the field. And I think for me, like that's the thing that I look back at that experience, and I'm so appreciative. I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful I got a chance to be able to be a part of something that was bigger than myself.
Yeah. So we were talking about Kent State, and that would be a good segue into the next part of your playing career, which should be independent ball. And I got the honor, along with other Chillicothe Paints fans, to watch you play in 2008. That was a crazy year in more ways than one, which we're going to talk about here. So how did you first of all, how did you discover the Chillicothe Paints baseball organization, and what motivated you to go like, yeah, I want to play for those guys?
Well, when I got released by the Houston Astros, which ironically is the organization I work for now, whole other. It's weird how the game is cyclical, but when I was released, I had a handful of independent league teams that reached out. Um, I was talking predominantly with the Paints with Mark Mason, and then obviously with Ross Vecchia with the Washington Wild Things, and um, I don't know. There just was something about just having a conversation with Mace that I just really felt like he was a manager I wanted to play for. I think that it was a bit of the calm demeanor. I think that the way that he spoke about how he was trying to be able to arrange the roster and the lineup to be able to win. And I think also too, like I like some of the nostalgia. You're talking about Chillicothe being one of the founding members of the Frontier League, and the ballpark down there, and obviously still being in the great state of Ohio, where it's only 2 hours and change from where I live up in Akron. It was just something that I felt like it was a good fit for me, kind of what I was looking for, and took a leap and went down to Chillicothe and to play at VA Memorial Stadium.
Yeah. So adding on to that, how was the 2008 season like? Obviously, I got to watch you and the other guys play, but take me through that. Take me to the 2000 season. It said on the back of the card, I'm going to show this on the video after I do editing here. It shows on the card that you had the 2008 season, but then everything picked. Wow. How was it like? Just getting ready for games in the Frontier League, and how did that all progress?
You broke up there. Can you restate the question? Sorry, Stephen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, season with just take me through that. How was the progression like? Because as I'm going to show here with video editing here with the video, the baseball card shows that it says that you had like a slow start to the 2008 season, but then everything picked. What was that like playing for the Paints in 2008?
Oh, I think that whenever you go into a new environment and you're experiencing professional baseball, a lot of it is it's especially in independent ball, like you got to do good, you got to perform. And I think that was different from my experiences in professional baseball, or in affiliated baseball versus indie ball. So I think sometimes, when you make that transition, there's a bit of like a learning curve with respect to, getting into, a better battle rhythm. I think that's one. I think two, it was refreshing to be able to get back to trying to just win that night, like whatever you had to do to be able to win the game. So it kind of gave a little bit of a college feel, something that I missed for the previous, couple seasons, when I was in affiliated baseball. And so I think more is like just getting my feet wet into the rhythm and into like what I needed. I think independent ball provides, more freedom for you in terms of what you need to be able to prepare for that night. And I think I just was, like most people, still trying to learn, kind of who I was and what I needed, because so much of the previous years, and even if you go back to college, a lot of it is already like laid out for you. And I think that's, one of the things I think is a good thing in terms of like creating structure. But I'm a big like why and how guy, especially now. And I think a lot of those lessons that I learned as a player are things that I try to impart upon, my players and players that I've had in the past here, because, it's the old adage, you want to feed a man, catch a fish. If you want to feed him for a lifetime, teach him how to fish. I take that strategy, very seriously now, because that's one of the things that I felt like was some of the causes for my ebbs and flows as a player, was just because I was kind of learning on the fly of like what I needed. So I think for me, like it was more getting into a sense of like what independent baseball was, and then learning kind of what I needed to be able to prepare for that night. And then once I kind of found that groove, that rhythm, I was able to kind of find a little bit more stability with that. And was fortunate enough that I got to play a couple more years, after my time in Chillicothe. And that afforded me that opportunity, to be able to just continue to play and continue to perform.
Yeah. So towards the end of the 2008 season, it was eventually announced that the Chillicothe Paints would no longer be playing in the Frontier League. They'd be switching over to the Prospect League, which they have been ever since. So, quick question about this. When did you and the other guys on the Frontier League Paints, when did you guys get that announcement? And how did you guys react to that?
Yeah, if I recall, and then again, my apologies. I'm trying to like remember more specifics, but I think it was near like almost the end of the season. A lot of our questions was like, what was our, our rights, in terms of like our contractual rights, like where they were going to go, how they were going to be signed, is there going to be a dispersal draft, where other teams were each going to be granted free agency and be able to go to whatever team we wanted to be able to go to. And I think that was kind of like the initial first thing, like with the whole entire group. But I think, getting a chance just to know, you and so many other people, Karen Redmond and Carl and everybody, like, they were, obviously upset that, they were transitioning out of, independent league baseball and getting into collegiate, summer league. And, I think a lot of it too, like in those moments, like you kind of, you remember how much, these, franchises mean to cities that they're in. And I think for me, like there was a mourning period, after that, knowing that, what a lot of, fans, and especially, people like yourself, what you guys were used to in terms of being able to go to VA Memorial Stadium every night, and your expectations for the type of baseball and the caliber of baseball. There was obviously a lot of people concerned about what that was going to be like moving forward. And, I think for me, like that's what I remember, about that transition. And, what's been awesome, I think, since, is being able to still, keep a weather eye on the franchise, and to see how much success they've had as they've transitioned into the Prospect League, and to watch that league grow, and how much, help and just impact Brian, Wickline has had in that process. I think he just was named, Prospect League like Hall of Famer or something, right? Am I missing on that? I thought there was something in that realm. But, I think that sometimes, like, that's a good example of, the one constant in life is that things are going to change. And I think that there's always, a beginning and an end to every single great story. And, even though that we didn't, perform or get to the postseason the way that our expectations were, I do think that the ending to the independent league story for the Chillicothe Paints I think was great, especially like I remember that last couple of games before Travis ended up getting this opportunity to go to the Atlantic League, and then he ended up getting into uh, affiliated baseball, getting back with Seattle Mariners. But being able to, rightfully send him off, being able to in the middle of the game pull him out and send out a replacement guy, and I remember, being there and just hearing the cheers and just the impact and the emotion. Um, being able to see that chapter be able to close just with obviously with how successful Travis was with the program, but with how much he meant to that to the city of Chillicothe and to the franchise. So I think for me, like that, all that, I'm recalling all that on the spot right now. But that I do remember that, and I do remember just how grateful I was to be a part of that experience with everybody.
Yeah, 2008, as I said earlier, it was a crazy year in more ways than one. And for me as a fan, because I had started going to Chillicothe Paints games beginning with the 2005 season, and then when it was announced that we're going to make this big change after the 2008 season, it did hit me pretty hard because it was like something that you've just gotten used to, and now you got to do something else. You got to adapt to something else. Summer Collegiate League baseball. It was an adjustment period, and so I remember from those days. I remember towards the end of 2008 that I had gone over to like the party deck area around left field, foul line of VA Memorial Stadium, and I would gather like contact information for all the players, and obviously you were one of them, Drew. And I still have that book even to this day. I still have that book where you wrote down your email address, and I was like, yeah, I've never let go of memories of watching Paints baseball, and it's really it's something else because I s- I kept going to Paints games for like a few more years, and then I had to adjust. I had to change things up in my life, and now here we are doing this. It's life can be unpredictable sometimes. That's probably my point. What I'm trying to say there. So moving on, you eventually in 2009, the very next year, you ended up with the Lake Erie Crushers, and I want to talk about this real fast because some of the Paints players that were there in Chillicothe in 2008 made the trip up north to Lake Erie. And in 2009, you guys won the Frontier League Championship. How was that like? How was that like going from what we just talked about in 2008 to what happened there in 2009?
Yeah, it kind of it's funny because I think it kind of speaks to just what I've perpetually done throughout the rest of my life, which is, I'm a builder, like I'm a change agent, and again, going through successful organizations, seeing how Doc ran things and Brian ran things down in Chillicothe, you kind of have like those. You have the framework, you have the skeleton of what success looks like, and getting a chance to go up to Lake Erie, and it's only about a 50-minute drive from the house. Especially after being ostensibly a nomad for the better part of 3+ years, being able to go back home and being able to have my family be able to watch every single home game. Even like going back now, like there's actually a number of photos that people were able to snap of, my dad over in left field, kind of like, with his like hyper intense focus. It was actually funny because like people say like when you're trying to focus, Drew, you actually look like your dad. And I look back at just the building that went into that, especially with with Gates and a number of other people that were a part of that, building that brand there in Lake Erie. And I think what was great about that is just being on the ground floor, being with a team that didn't have even a moniker and the stadium still being built. But again, you kind of obviously, it's a tough word to be able to use, but stealing a lot of the successful ideas that were in Chillicothe and being able to bring them, um, to Lake Erie, talk about, how to be able to, weave the fabric of the community into the team, I took it upon myself, especially just because I'm a native to that area, doing a lot more community outreach, being more available, and a lot of things that I learned just being around and introducing myself and running into people such as yourself. And I look back at that 2009 season. There was a lot of luck that was involved in terms of the types of players that we got into that team. John Mazzarelli was our manager. Maz, had a number of years where he was the bridesmaid and never a bride when he was with the Wild Things. And being able to see him build that roster, and then being able to, have success and then kind of build momentum, get into the postseason late in the season and kind of just take that momentum. And, each series we were down 0-2 and had to win late to be able to get back and to be able to win. Same thing. We had to go game 5 in Kalamazoo against Fran Weirden. We had to go game 5 in River City to be able to go and win. And I look back at just, what was being built there was a lot of fun. It was cool. We actually had, it was 2000. What was it? I think it was 2022 is the 15-year anniversary. And I was home for some reason. I was able to work it out in my travel schedule and what I was doing. I was able to go back and, being able to celebrate with a lot of my, former teammates up there was a lot of fun. I was actually able to bring like my whole family. So my wife and kids, and Amanda's been with me since I was in high school. So she's been through it all. She would actually be a heck of an interview, I think, for you to just about, what that experience is on the other side of being somebody that's supporting a guy chasing after his dream. And, I think that, that experience, with the Crushers was awesome. It was very beautiful just to be able to see that season unfold. And, it's cool to be able to see the success that they've had, moving into even like now as like the whole Frontier League and Major League Baseball, taking over, the minor leagues and then having partner leagues. And, I think that it's been a lot of fun to be able to see those things start like from the grassroots, if you will, and being able to see them, blossom, both seeing how successful the Paints have been, and then obviously being able to see how successful the Crushers have been since then.
Yeah. And the baseball industry has changed a lot since the games at Chillicothe. So a lot has changed.
Oh yeah, and
moving
that,
on to
go ahead. No.
No, you go ahead. Okay. Yeah, moving on to the next question here. We'll get back to the baseball industry soon enough, but the Greater Akron Baseball Hall of Fame. This information out. It was about 2014, the year, I think. Could you tell me what happened there with the Greater Akron Baseball Hall of Fame in 2014?
Yeah, I was selected to be a member of the Hall of Fame. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to do some, cool things in my career, both as a player and then as I've transitioned into a coach and into, an executive in my previous lives. I remember that night, and a very close family friend of mine, Rob Riho, is the guy that actually, submitted the proposal for me to be a part of the Hall of Fame. Then the board of directors and the members of the Hall of Fame, they vote on who should be a part of that. And they actually had a ring ceremony when I was in Pasco, Washington, when I was managing the Tri-City Dust Devils. And they called me out early, and I had no idea what was going on. And they had the ring there, and they showed me the plaque. And because I wasn't able, obviously, to leave to go back for the festivities, because the festivities that happens at Canal Park, which actually is the home of the AA Akron Rubber Ducks, the Guardians. And that was my ceremony, and be able to have that. And what's fun is that my mom and dad were there, and obviously my wife and my kids were there as well. But that was cool. And talk about a full circle moment. In 2022, my dad was inducted in the Greater Akron Baseball Hall of Fame. And so I was able to work it into my schedule where I was able to bump home. And I was able to be there for dad to throw out his first pitch. All the inductees, they go out on the field and they throw a first pitch. There's a row of 7 or 8 or 9 guys. But yeah, I was able to be there for dad's induction, and then obviously a couple of years later in 2024 is when he passed. But yeah, it's really cool to think about just the honor of all the different people that are in there. I mean, that list is extremely long. There's a ton of very successful people that play baseball or have impacted the game of baseball in the Akron area. I'm fortunate to be a part of that. But I think that for me, the thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm in there with my dad.
Yeah. It's it just it adds something more special when you have something like that, when you have a father son dynamic duo, if you will, just being in a hall of fame like that. It's a special thing. And so uh moving on to this one, now, you're a coach in affiliated baseball. uh, I hope I'm getting this team name right because I don't I don't normally follow baseball these days. They're called the Sugarland Cowboys.
Sugarland Space Cowboys. Yep.
Is that correct? Yeah. So take me through your coaching days, starting with as early as West Virginia, Rancho Cucamonga, through all those experiences as a coach, hitting coach, manager. What is that like?
I'm very dynamic. I don't know if you have enough time for me to be able to go through all my stops. I mean, I'll briefly go through the team. So, when I got done, playing with professional baseball, I coached as a volunteer assistant at Cleveland State. Then I was also a volunteer at University of Akron. At the end of the 2011 year, I threw my resume out, and I was very fortunate that the Colorado Rockies, ironically, that's the Albuquerque Isotopes parent affiliate, is the Rockies. I was very fortunate that I got a chance to be a hitting coach in rookie ball in Grand Junction, Colorado. After a year there, I went to Pasco, Washington for 2 years where I was the manager. The year after that, I went back into the hitting space where I was the hitting coach with the Modesto Nuts in the California League. At the end of that year, I was hired away by the Los Angeles Dodgers to manage the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, and that was kind of the start of kind of like I would call the fork in the road for me. I historically was probably a little bit more tradition based, not really up to speed with the data, information, biomech, that type of thing. The Dodgers are very instrumental in being able to get me to understand and learn those things. And I think that that's where I got a chance to see a whole other level and aspect of professional baseball, but also how to be able to leverage the margins. And then I was able to, again, talk about, the skeletal structure of what a successful organization is supposed to look, sound, and feel like. And we're able to build some really cool cultures there in Rancho, and actually culminated to a 2018 California League Championship. And, that whole year and that run was incredible. And then at the end of that year, ended up leaving and going to take a job where I was the assistant hitting coordinator with the Pirates, but I also managed the West Virginia Black Bears. Went back a little bit to my roots. Ironically, that franchise in West Virginia, that franchise used to be in Jamestown, New York, and that was my first assignment as a player. I played for the Jamestown Jammers, so I have the honor of being both a player and a manager of that franchise. And at the end of that season, was hired away to go be the hitting coordinator for the Kansas City Royals. And a lot of the guys that are up there right now, from Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, Michael Garcia, and a number of other guys, was a part of the team that redesigned that entire hitting strategy to be able to get those guys to the big leagues. And at the end of last year, left Kansas City, and then want to get back in the dugout, and got the opportunity with the Houston Astros to be the AAA hitting coach. So I think that's as succinct as I can possibly make in terms of my journey. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So speaking of the baseball industry again, and you would know because you're in affiliated ball as a coach, what have been like some of the biggest changes to the industry of baseball since, of course, the late 2000s, since your playing days? Now you're a coach, because we hear about like rules changes in Major League Baseball and financial structures, financial issues going on with organizations. What are your thoughts on the baseball industry as a whole in the last few years?
Well, I think like everything else, life changes and the world changes. In terms of the financial stuff, that's unfortunately above my head and my pay grade. So I'll kind of leave that to the
Okay.
people that have institutional knowledge on that. But in terms of the changes, obviously the COVID experience that we all had. Major League Baseball ended up restructuring the minor leagues, where now instead of it being like a partnership, it's actually like it's a one baseball vision. So minor league baseball is ran by Major League Baseball. So what they ended up doing is they ended up contracting, I think 42 teams is the final number. And really, what the goal was to be able to get better working environments for all the players. So now the minor league season, and we're experiencing that now. So instead of being a 3 game set, then you go on the road for a 3 game set, another 3 game set, come back home, and you're kind of like bouncing all over the place. In order to be able to help increase like the return on investment with a lot of the players. We do 6 game series now with Mondays being off. So, unlike when I, played and my early part of my coaching careers where you get like maybe 1, maybe 2 off days a month, you get 4. In addition to that, you play a 6 game set, whether you're at home or on the road, you get 6 days at that place. So what it affords you to do is it doesn't necessarily crush you in terms of like the travel. Like you have basically 1 travel day a week instead of it being potentially 2 or 3, where you're on a 12 or 14-hour bus ride from Chillicothe to O'Fallon, Missouri, or you're trying to go up to Traverse City and you're driving 9 hours and trying to play that night. Minor league baseball now it's a little bit more function forward in terms of that, and they restructured the leagues so the league footprints weren't as wild and crazy as what they were before. Like I remember in the Pioneer League, whenever we would go to the Montana division, our off day was a 15-hour bus ride to get up there. And then you'd play for a week, whether it was in Billings or Great Falls or Missoula or Helena. And then your off day was the drive back. And it's a lot. It really crushes just, how your body, operates, and obviously being cramped up in buses for that amount of time. It's tough. So, the contraction aspect to it was just to be able to allow people, the opportunity to be able to develop players at a more rapid rate, just because you actually get to an affiliate, you get to a city, you can stay there, you can plan out your days more. Like I remember, even back when I played, you'd have like a night game. You'd come in on a Tuesday night game. Wednesday would be a day game, and then Thursday was a night game, and then you're driving that night to get back to your town, and then you're playing that next night. And sometimes it was like night day night with a travel day, then night then a day. It really messes just with your body clock in terms of how you can rest and recover. So a lot of the things that were done were with the player in mind, just to be able to limit just like how rigorous the travel was on the players. In addition to that, when the contraction occurred, it actually allowed Major League Baseball to set more parameters in terms of like what it's like to be in the clubhouses and what things are out there, because the lack of financial compensation was one big sticking point with the minor league players, which obviously now they're getting compensated much more than back when I played. I'll leave that number out of this for that matter. You can actually look it up if people were so inclined to do so. But the facility infrastructure is better. All the teams now, they provide 2 full meals for our players every single day at the ballpark. And it's not just PB&Js. We're getting stuff catered in from, whether it's Red Robin or Chili's or, whatever, decent enough food and sustenance that it allows players to be able to fuel their bodies appropriately. And so with that type of investment, it actually, was the reason why Major League Baseball ended up taking over, the minor leagues, because you need to have, clubhouses that are able to do that, spaces to do that, kitchenettes, commissary areas, that type of thing. So a lot of that has changed. I think what has also changed in addition to that is obviously there is a domestic reserve roster limit. So there's less players that are coming into professional baseball. So really that like threshold to be able to cross over to get into professional baseball, that filter has gotten much more narrow than what it used to be. And so I think what you're starting to see now is the brand of baseball is getting, it's a higher level of talent. that cross the threshold. But I think what it actually is also doing too is it's actually raising the level of the independent league performance as well. I'm talking to good friends of mine that are in that still. They're coaching, or they're the director of player procurement or whatever it may be for their independent league affiliate, and a lot of them are actually like getting some really good players to be able to go there. So I think all that to be said, I think it's change is inevitable, and I think that the way that it's continued to change, it's obviously with the player in mind to be able to make what people want is a better on-field product. So I think those are a number of reasons why I think those things have changed. So sorry for my soapbox with that, but hopefully anybody that would be curious about it, at least that gives them a little bit of like a direction of to some of the whys and hows to those things.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up with this question, and a real basic question. In your own words, Drew Saylor, for anyone that is wanting to get into the business of baseball, whether actually playing the game or just being associated with any organization, like any member of a staff, what would your advice be for that person?
Wow, great question. I think anybody that wants to be involved, I think that you have to have a servant mindset. You need to be of service to people. You want to be able to help them be able to grow in whatever direction that they the players want to be able to grow, or staff. Like, I think you need to be able to have that mindset that you want to be able to help leave whatever space that you're in. You wanted to leave it better than the way that you found it. I think that having that is a very important ingredient. I mean, as a guy that has went through, tons of hiring processes, both like trying to hire people and me trying to get a job. I think that that's one of the most important things that I think that are there. I think in addition to that, I think it's, from a coach perspective, I can probably speak a little bit better to that versus the business operation side of things. I think it's being able to understand just how the games continue to evolve. There's a large third party group that's out there that is coaching and teaching players. I think being up to speed with the number of different ways that hitting or pitching or fielding or running can be done, having a big kind of like global understanding of how strength and conditioning, performance science, behavioral science, how all those things comprise who the person is that's in front of you. And I think when you kind of get those key foundations or core tenets, if you will, I think from there, it's, if you want to be involved in, something that's local from like, a little league perspective or a travel ball program, I think that, being able to volunteer to start, I think is a good place. And then from there, just being able to network, getting a chance to be able to reach out to people. I have a bit of a soft spot for people that reach out to me, through social media or through LinkedIn, and want to get, more information, which I can, be much more detailed in those one-on-one, opportunities. And I can also look at just what their, current constraint is in terms of like what, they bring to the table now, where I can direct their attention for them to be able to learn and to grow. And then from there, maybe point them in directions to be able to continue to branch out their network. Very similar to players, it's really difficult to get into professional baseball, to coach or to be in a support system or to get into a leadership role. Very similar to the players, like that like filter and that entry point is actually getting even more narrow, just like the players. But I think all that to be said, it's all in terms of how you relate to other people. And I think that when you have that teaching mindset, which I'm very fortunate, my mom has worked for 30 plus years with Summa Healthcare. She's a servant at heart. My dad was a teacher for 30 odd years, coach for 35 to 40 years. I think in a lot of ways, like through osmosis, like that's who I am. That's how I'm wired. I think that, finding those foundations and understanding that, the game you're not going to get rich in, but in terms of your experiences and how to be able to help other people, that's where you get a chance to fill up your well, is just your impact that you have on other people. So I think that would be probably like maybe some, ways that I would probably encourage people if they wanted to get into, teaching into coaching. I think that would be some really good questions and really good starting points to be able to answer for yourself. Because again, I think that, each person's what they want out of those experiences are very different. And I think where you fit in that scope, there's a lot of other different avenues to be able to go and impact people.
Yeah. So with that, that concludes this episode of Stephen Interviews You, episode number 38. Drew Saylor, thank you so much once again for being my special guest on this show. We go way back, like I said, back to 2008, and just being able to talk to you again after all these years is just, it's a special thing for me to have this opportunity. So, uh, once again, guys, if you like this content, please leave this a like, smash the thumbs up button, and be back with more interview related content soon enough. Thanks again, Drew Saylor, for discussing topics that matter to you. And thank you guys for watching. Take care.